Hey guys, Charlie Murphy here. Thank you for choosing my video. We are playing 1-2 No Limit 6 Max on Ignition. The games are already up and running, so we'll jump right into the action. Upper right-hand table will raise first in from the cutoff with Ace-Jack offsuit using a roughly 28% raise first in range. Get called by the in-position player and the big blind. Get a pretty good flop for our hand. Jack 9-5 of monotone. We have top pair, top kicker, and the nut flush draw. We get led into for half pot by the big blind. We're just going to go ahead and call our continue range here. I really want to have a raising range on that board. My draws, my sets, my overpairs, my flushes. He continues blasting. Now he blasts for pot. A little bit suspicious. However, I don't think I can fold a hand this strong just because I'm suspicious that I'm being led into. I would like to know if this player was a weak player or a fish before I go ahead and just assume for sure that it's a correct call. Now he jams all in. A tough spot up there. Lower right-hand table will 3-bet the middle position, raise first in with the pocket kings. Lower left-hand table against the 3-bet, we're going to go ahead and defend with the jacks. I used to have a hard time seeing him doing this with worse multi-way or having a bluff in that particular line. I'm going to go ahead and make a fairly tight fold. Go ahead and range bet small on the lower right-hand table. Lower left-hand table, we flop top set. He checks to us. We're going to go ahead and stab for half pot. Lower right-hand table will raise the cutoff first in with Ace-7 suited, part of about a 28% raise first in range. We get check raised. Jamming is fine and flatting is fine here. I'm trying to decide if I think one is much better than the other. I think I don't necessarily want to be jamming my draws. I'm just going to go ahead and continue for a call with my continue range. Not the best turn card for us, of course, but we'll call this small raise in position here with the Ace-7, and that's a dream flop for that hand. I'm really not that worried about him having a 9 in his range here. I think I'm going to have to call off if he jams. We'll just go ahead and check call with our trips, give him a chance to put the rest in bad. And we will go ahead and check back because I'm going to be checking back all my draws on that spot as well. We'll call off with the trip 7s. He moves all in. He's going to have to show me a 9 here. I'm calling off with my top set. And he does have the 9s, but that's the way it goes. I don't necessarily know that I love his flop check range in that spot with that particular hand. Upper left-hand table will raise first in under the gun, using about an 18% raise first in range. If the king 6-5 two-tone flop, we've got the nut flush draw. We'll be checking range here. An in-position player, although we're getting led into, we're just going to go ahead and flat our entire continue range here in this spot to trap with my sets or my good top pairs. He continues leading into us. Nothing to do but go ahead and continue to call with the nut flush draw on this spot. He checks. I'm going to go ahead and turn my hand into a bluff now that he stops betting. He quickly folds. Hit a 3x open from the cutoff in the upper left-hand table. We're going to go ahead and defend it. Oh, I'm sorry. There was a 3-bet in front of me from the small blind, so now I'm going to be playing cold 4-bet or fold, and I'll fold the ace-jack offsuit. Had it folded to me after the open, I would have defended for a call, but that's not the situation we find ourselves in. This guy, he's playing wacky. He's leading multi-way into players. He's using weird, funky 3-bet size out of position. He's playing 56-33 over 9 hands, 60-40 over 10. He's probably a recreational player. We're going to go ahead and tag him as such. Lower right-hand table, we're effectively the button the player behind us just sat in. He's not dealt cards yet, so we'll go ahead and treat this like the button raise first in with 9-8 offsuit, part of about a 44% button raise first in range. It's probably one of the weakest hands in my raise first in range in that spot, but still a fine hand to open. Upper right-hand table, blind on blind, will raise the pocket eights using about a 45% blind on blind raise first in range. We get called by a suspected recreational player. We'll check range to him on that ace-5-3 two-tone flop. He checks back. Turn is another ace, pairing the top pair on the board. I'm now going to start jabbing at this pot small. I can get value from 5x, 3x, various straight draws or flush draws. I can also deny equity from overcards that don't want to call, but will, however, have some chance to outdraw me. Or perhaps I get a smidge of value because they float with the small bet. I'm going to go ahead and check to him here. I often bet very mergy in the river in these spots after using that small turn bet. But here I just really can't get called by all that much, and I could possibly even bluff catch against various busted draws. He had the Jack-7 of diamonds. He probably should have turned the hand into a bluff. Opted not to. Upper right-hand table will raise first in from the button with ace-10 offsuit using a 44% raise first in range. Both the small blind and the big blind come along and call. Not going to be range betting because we're multi-way here, assuming that it checks to me. I would be betting some of my ace-10 gut shots, although I think I would prioritize the ones with a heart in my hand and check back the ones that do not. Betting would be okay as well. I'm going to opt to check. I think that's a little bit better, so I just don't start having too many bluffs in my range to start out with when I'm blasting away at the flop and then future streets when we're multi-way. Lower right-hand table, the cutoff raises first in 3x. We have ace-8 offsuit and no need to defend then that size and that formation, so we'll go ahead and fold. He bets 8 into 14. It's a reasonably small bet from a reasonably weak player. I'm going to go ahead and float that. play him in position. I'm going to consider bluffing the river. He bets half pot. You can sometimes bluff raise in these spots, though against a recreational player, I'm going to do it a little bit more cautiously. I'd look for a smaller bet size as the reasoning to trigger that move. Here against the half pot bet, I think it's probably something like a king or a queen trying to get some value, and I just don't know that I get enough folds to justify a bluff raise against that particular sizing, so I'll go ahead and fold my hand. Lower right-hand table, raise first in from the button with king-queen suited, using about a 44% raise first in range. The small blind calls, checks to me on king 8-6 two-ton, and we'll go ahead and range bet small. Lower left-hand table, we'll raise first in from the cutoff with king 8 suited, using a 28% raise first in range. Big blind calls us. We get an ace-4-3 two-tone flop. He checks to me, and we'll be range betting small. He check calls. The turn is a 10, an offsuit 10. I would be overbetting or checking on this texture. Overbetting most of my sets, probably trapping with aces because they lock the board down so hard, and then blasting with various flush draws. Some of the Broadway gut shots that have a heart in them. I could also have 5-6 in my overbet range as well. And maybe some hands like 6-7 of hearts. King 8, I can possibly bluff catch on the king or maybe even the 8, or bluff the river should it check to me again. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the check back line. I'm looking to, when I'm overbetting or checking, I'm looking to overbet hands that are already strong or hands that have draws to very strong hands. Hand like king 8 that doesn't have a really much draw potential to anything that's all that strong. I don't want to bloat the pot with it. I want to keep the pot smaller. When he leads into me, I'll just go ahead and fold. Blind down blind, facing a 3x open, 4-3 offsuit, probably just outside the range of hands you want to be defending with. Pretty close. I don't think calling is terrible, but I'm going to opt to fold it. I'm going to look for a new table on that lower left-hand spot. I think there's really not too much in the way of obvious recreational players there. Seems like a poor table to be playing at on a Saturday night. Lower left-hand table, get into under the gun player limped, almost certainly a recreational player. The small blind completes, will isolate out of the blind. The big blind with about a 13% range, including ace-queen offsuit. The limper calls, the big blind, or small blind folds out. Excuse me, we're heads up, and I'll go ahead and range bet small on the Jack 9-5 rainbow flop. He calls us. Turn is the 4 of spades. I do have some decent removal here to top pairs. I block Jack Queen. I block Ace Jack. I also block the nut flush draw. I think I'm actually going to go ahead and, well, I'm trying to decide if I want to overbet. I don't really want to overbet just based on removal without necessarily having some real robust equity, especially against a recreational type player. So I think it's probably a bit better to go ahead and check that one. I'll just surrender that. It was close. There was some reasons to bet, but I think it's going to be a little bit safer to just go ahead and check that one and then check fold when he stabs the turn. Upper left-hand table, raise first in from the cutoff with ace-5 suited using a 28% raise first in range. Lower right-hand table will raise first in blind on blind with ace-3 offsuit using a 45% range. We will check range on that queen 7-3 monotone board to the big blind. Upper left-hand table, raise the button first in with ace-5 offsuit using a 44% range. Lower right-hand table, after the flop checks through, we'll start stabbing small at the turn. He calls. The river is the king, putting a 4 flush out there, the king of diamonds, so we're going to just go ahead and turn this hand into a bluff and use the pot size bet on that 4 flush run out. Quickly calls me down with queen 5. He doesn't even think twice. He's not having any of my bullshit. But he's 57-14. We can probably tag him as a recreational player. Upper right-hand table, our button raised first in got got 2x out of the small blind from 5 to 10. We can call essentially everything against that size, and even a weak hand like ace-5 offsuit. So we're going to just go ahead and call for that price. Lower right-hand table, raise king 10 offsuit first in from the button using a 44% range. We get led into for half pot on that queen 10-7 two-tone flop. We've got second pair, second kicker, and we've also got the spade in our hand. We'll go ahead and call that. Upper right-hand table, he checks on that 10-5 3 two-tone. I'm going to go ahead and check back my second pair. We get led into, again, half pot by the recreational player. We're going to continue calling with the second pair. Upper right-hand table will raise the button first in with king 4 suited using a 44% range. He stops betting. I'm content to check down my 10 at that point. We're against ace-jack with the gut shot, so we're good. On the upper right-hand table, the recreational player now bets 8 into 20. We've got a pair. We're going to go ahead and call that. Upper left-hand table, raise the cutoff first in with ace-10 suited using a 28% range. Going to go ahead and range bet small the upper left-hand table and the queen-jack 4 rainbow flop. We get bet into here for pot. This weird line, that check bet bet line. I think this may actually be a fold. Check bet bet line from fish, and that line is slightly less bluff than typical. The pot size bet's also slightly less bluff than typical. Flush closing river, slightly less bluff than typical. Although the low board staying low, however, is very overbluffed. I think that actually makes it a call. I'm going to go ahead and look this up. Oh, and I'm glad I thought that through, because I wanted to fold, and I would have just given away a nice pot against ace-king. And the data point that led to all that was the low board staying low. I mean, most data points pointed towards things being a slight fold. You know, the pot size bet's a little bit under bluffed from recreational players in that particular formation. The line, the delayed continuation bet, and follow through on the river also, as well as the flush closing river. However, the low board staying low is just such a massively overbluffed spot, especially by recreational players, that it sort of changes the calculus entirely, and all those things that were slightly pointing towards fold now end up making this a call. We call in the upper left-hand table with blind on blind against the recreational player with Jack-6 suited. He min-bets into us. I'm just going to go ahead and treat that like a fancy check. I'm going to go ahead and stab for half pot. I do have top two pair, which of course is nice. Calls. Turn is the 5, which is not necessarily a great card for us, as now the 5 is trips, and our 2 pair could be counterfeited if he does somehow have an overpair. I think this will actually play a bit better in the check back line to bluff catch or under rep and value bet. He checks again. The queen out there isn't great either, as now he could have any queen X type hand that has queens and 5s over my jacks and 6s. That said, I think I can still try to squeeze some value out of this. I want to be trying to value bet thin, especially against these recreational players that, while they fold a lot, they also call with goofy stuff. Now he goes and check raises me, and that's just going to be the easiest fold in the world against a recreational player or a suspected recreational player. Easy fold against regs too, but upper left-hand table, blind on blind, raise queen 9 offsuit using a 45% range. Lower right-hand table, we get that recreational player raises under the gun, the small blind calls. I'm going to go ahead and pop that up. We're getting pretty bloated here, so I'm going to use something like probably like a 6 to 7% 3-bet range. I'm going to stack off with queens plus or ace-king. Probably have hands like jacks or 10s, most of the suited broadways, and ace-queen offsuit in my range. We get a queen 10-4 rainbow flop. I'm going to go ahead and range bet him small. Of course, got top side, have the stone cold nuts, at least at the moment. Upper left-hand table, I'll raise the cutoff first in with ace-8 suited using a 28% range. Against the min raise, we can actually fold king 6 over here, even though the price is pretty good. We just don't need to be calling with these janky offsuit dominated hands. Turn is the king of diamonds, putting a possible straight out there and a flush draw out there. Now that I no longer have top pair, I think I can actually go ahead and continue betting this. I don't need to trap as if the board was a bit drier. I'll go ahead and bet half pot and just plan to jam most rivers. Upper left-hand table, I'm going to raise first in from middle position with deuces using a 21% range. Upper right-hand table, I'm going to raise first in on the cutoff with 9-7 suited using a 28% range. We get a middle position raise first in. The button 3-bets him. This is going to be a cold 4-bet or fold spot for me out of the small blind. The way I'm going to approach this is look for my stack off hands first. I'm going to stack off in the spot with queens plus ace king. I really can't have all that many bluffs, though, with the sizings that they use going from 6 to 22, as the pot's going to get awfully bloated awfully quick. I think ace-queen offsuit is probably a little bit too weak to go ahead and bluff. I probably don't want to have nearly as many bluffs, or at least not quite as many bluffs as I would if I start using that kind of hand. I think my range there is going to be queens plus ace-king to stack off, and then maybe cold 4-bet, ace-queen, ace-jack, king-queen, king-jack, the suited varieties only, but planning to fold those if I actually get jammed on over the top. Upper left-hand table, button raises 2.5x for raise first in, and the big blind 9-7 offsuit is just outside of standard defense range for me there in that formation with that sizing at play. Lower left-hand table, raise 4 is first in from the cutoff using a 28% range. Upper right-hand table will raise ace-8 offsuit first in, blind on blind using a 45% range. I will check range to the recreational player on the lower left-hand table on that 8-3-3 board. That's a pretty good board for the 4s against a player that has all kinds of junk in his range. He's played 92% of hands with the first 2 orbits. He checks back, turn is an offsuit 7. I'm going to go ahead and start jabbing at that pot small with my 4s to either charge or deny equity from the various overcards in his range. He calls. River is the 8, double paired board. I think I'm actually going to go ahead and put in a bet. I'm like using the pot size bets here on these double paired boards. Doing this trying to get called down by various ace highs in his range. As opposed, the other option would be checking and try to snap off a bluff if he has a hand like queen jack that just stabs. I think either are reasonable. Maybe it's a bit better to use a smaller size there, but I don't want to start complicating my strategy too much. I guess as an exploit, I could use a smaller size to try to get called down by that guy. But I think the play as played is fine as well. Upper left-hand table, raise under the gun with king-queen offsuit using an 18% range. Lower right-hand table, direct limps under the gun. We'll check in from the big blind and check range to him. He checks back. We have an 8-7-4, 8-7-4 deuce, two-tone board. I'm going to go ahead and start jabbing at that pot small. Jab for the minimum. I do have a gut shot and an overcard. Upper right-hand table, will raise the button first in with ace-king using a 44% range. We get raised up, and I'll just go ahead and fold against the raise from that limping passive player. Upper right-hand table, the big blind calls and checks to us on queen 10-8 rainbow. I will go ahead and put in a small range bet. I do have 2 overcards and a gut shot to the nuts. We get called. Turn is the 4. Trying to decide if this hand is supposed to be a bet or a check here. I mean, I can obviously have hands like king jack that are going to be bets. I think it's going to be okay to go ahead and start overbetting here in this particular spot. Actually, no, I like the overbet better with the gut check. I also have a hand like ace jack and king jack, and I also block the possible straights. So I'm going to go ahead and treat this as a check back. Now when he checks again on that 4 straight run, I'm going to turn my ace-king high into a bluff and use the pot size bet on the 4 straight run out. I can have hands like 10 Jack, 8 Jack, pocket jacks that play that way. Upper left-hand table, raise the button first in with ace-3 suited using a 44% range. Everyone quickly folds. I'm going to shuffle out the upper left-hand table as well, as I've got 4 very clear regular players, and the player that I had immediate position on who I thought might be a recreational player because of some weird bet sizing and line choices he was taking does not have particularly wacky pre-flop stats, so perhaps tagging him as a recreational player was a bit premature. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle that one out. The upper right-hand table, the recreational player is sitting out. I'm going to hang around for a bit to see if he comes back before I jump to any conclusions, but it's possible this table is also not that good anymore either. The lower right-hand table seems to be pretty much infested with regulars as well. So my tables aren't that good at the moment. I only see one fish. He is a true mega fish, but he has the worst possible seat with direct position on me. Lower left-hand table, that's where he is. We raise the middle position first in with ace-10 using a 21% range. And that player I was just referencing comes along for a call from his cutoff. I'll go ahead and check range to the in-position player. We're multi-way on that flop, 7-5-3. He stabs for about 75%, and I'll just go ahead and fold my ace-10. Lower right-hand table, king-7 on the button is just outside my standard open range. Pretty close, but I prefer to fold it. Oh, and the recreational player was targeting that table left. All my tables are bust right now, so we're just going to have to get a whole lot of new ones up as soon as possible. Upper left-hand table, I'll raise middle position first in with ace-8 suited using a 21% range. Upper right-hand table, blind on blind, get a 3x open. I will go ahead and defend that with queen-9. This guy has been pretty passive so far, over 40 hands, so it's not an insignificant sample. But I think it's still okay to defend this pre-flop. He checks to me on the ace-ace-king rainbow flop. I'm going to go ahead and stab for half pot. Check calls. Get an 8 of diamonds. We don't have too much in the way of equity at this point, at least. And queen high does have a smidge of showdown value, though probably not too much in that particular line against this player. I'll go ahead and check that back, preferring to bet hands for bluffs like diamond draws, 9-10, queen 10, queen jack. I'm sorry, not 9-10, but the various Broadway straight draws. I'm just going to give up and show down my queen high. Upper right-hand table does have a new player sitting in immediately before me with $152 buying in about 75, 76 blinds deep. We're going to stick around as he is very likely to be a recreational player buying in for that size. Lower right-hand table, raise middle position first in with pocket kings using a 21% range. Get called by an in-position player, new to the table, but playing short, playing about 170, about 85 blinds deep. We get squeezed, 3-bet squeezed by the small blind. Normally against a small blind 3-bet when I'm in middle position, I'm going to raise up kings, kings, aces, and ace-king suited to stack off with and start flatting hands like ace-king offsuit and queens in position as a default. Because of the squeeze situation with that player behind me still to act, I'm probably going to turn ace-king offsuit and pocket queens into 4-bet call off hands. I'm going to get a lot tighter with my call defenses as well, too, because that player behind me could either back jam or call in position and deny a lot of my equity. Maybe use ace-queen offsuit as a bluff in either of those scenarios I just described. Upper right-hand table, we defended the big blind against a 3x open from the button with ace-9 offsuit. The flop checks back. The turn is the queen. We start poking at that flop small, using that small turn jab. He calls us. River is the 8. I'm going to go ahead and turn my hand into a bluff at this point and use the full pot size bet. Lower left-hand table, we'll raise 10s first in from the button using a 44% range. Get called from the big blind by a suspected recreational player playing about 75 blinds deep. We'll go ahead and range bet him small after his check on the 6-6 deuce rainbow board. Lower right-hand table, get a 2.5x open from the button, which we will defend from the big blind with our ace-10 offsuit. And we'll check range to him on the king 6-4 two-tone. He bets small. I can check call with my ace high here and some backdoor draws at least once. Recreational player check called on that 6-6 deuce two-tone board. I don't think I want to be overbetting the 10s. I'm going to use an overbetter check size. I'm going to go ahead and check this back. And against that second barrel with the ace-10, I can just go ahead and fold. He goes ahead and bets about 75% of pot, 12 into 16. I can just go ahead and make a very easy call down with the pocket 10s. He showed up with queen 9, so he did river top pair. Lower right-hand table, we'll raise the button first in with sevens using a 45% range. Against that min bet on the upper left-hand table, go ahead and fold the ace-8, even though we do have a gut shot to a four-card straight run out. Well, we'll have the low end of it. It's just not that valuable a draw. Small blind and big blind both call us on the lower right-hand table on the queen 8-8 two-tone board. I'm going to go ahead and check back my sevens, not range betting multi-way. On the offsuit king turn, they both check again. I'm going to go ahead and start stabbing at that pot small now, using the roughly 1/3 size because of the multi-way nature of that pot. Upper left-hand table, a recreational player limps under the gun. I was planning to isolate him, but the middle position player beat me to it, so I'll fold my queen-jack from the button. Another recreational player looks like he's coming along for a call from the cutoff, too. Lower right-hand table, a shorter stack player, or at least not a full stack player. He's playing about 80 blinds deep. He goes ahead and min raises from middle position. The small blind calls. I will go ahead and call with my pocket sixes on the big blind, rather closing the action. And I will check my range out of the big blind to the razor. Especially multi-way, I'm really just looking for the third six before I start putting too much money into this pot. Flop checks through. Turn is an offsuit 7 to go with that queen 10-7 two-tone flop. I'm going to go ahead and start stabbing at that turn small since nobody else seemed to show much interest in this pot so far. Upper left-hand table, raise ace-5 under the gun. Now, I was planning to really bluff with this, but with that 7 out there, even though the flush draw completed, I now have a full house when the board runs out 7-7. I don't really think I fold a queen or a 10 too often. I'm just going to check this and try to show down against some kind of flush or busted straight draw. Against pocket eights, which I'm probably also not folding. For left-hand table, we're four-handed on that flop. A couple players in position, so I'll be checking range. Upper right-hand table, I'm going to go ahead and raise the button first in with ace-6 suited, and the lower right-hand table, raise the button first in with 8-7 suited using a 44% range in both spots. Upper right-hand table, we get an ace-king-3 two-tone flop, and the big blind checks to me, so I'll go ahead and range bet him small. Upper left-hand table, that in-position player that's short stabbed at that pot a pretty healthy size, so we'll go ahead and fold the bottom pair. Lower right-hand table, the big blind goes ahead and 3-bets us to about a 4.5x size. We can defend even in this particular formation with 8-7 suited, so we'll go ahead and call. Lower left-hand table, blind on blind, we'll call the 3x open with pocket fives and the big blind. Upper right-hand table, I'm going to go ahead and use overbet or check and check back my weak pair of aces. on the Ace King 3-7 two-tone flop. And against that river 2/3 lead, I'm almost certain that's going to be a call. I'm going to think about it for a minute. Lower right-hand table, we get that small bet on Ace Jack 8 two-tones. We're just going to, or rainbows. We're just going to go ahead and call. He made the flush with Queen 4, which is entirely fine. Lower right-hand table, he keeps barreling. That's not a great card for our hand. We don't pick up any equity. We don't block any possible straights, or even block any kind of like flushes that might run out later on. It's a very easy fold in my opinion. Lower right-hand table, I'm going to raise under the gun with King Queen suited using an 18% range. Get a 3x open from the cutoff in the upper right-hand table, and we'll go ahead and defend the big blind with pocket sixes. And then check range to the raiser on the King 6-3 two-tone flop, looking to put in a check raise should he be continuation betting. He does not. Instead, he checks back. The turn is an offsuit ace. I'm going to go ahead and start jabbing at that pot small. Lower left-hand table, raise middle position first in with Jack 10 suited using a 21% range. He calls. River is a 9. I guess some straights completed in theory 7-10, 5-7, though I'm really not all that worried about those being out there. I think what I want to do is go ahead and overbet my hand here. Overbet my hand for value. I'm going to use a 2x size, so I'm just go ahead and put in that bet right now and see if I can't get hero called down. We do get hero called down. He had pocket queens. Lower right-hand table, the in-position player stabs about 75–80% a pot on that Queen 10-8 rainbow board. And the small blind calls, I've got middle pair, gut shot, and the backdoor flush draw. So I'm going to peel once here and see what kind of card shows up on the turn. You get a deuce of clubs, which does absolutely nothing for me. So that's the kind of card we'll be planning to check fold on against continued aggression. Upper left-hand table, raise under the gun with King Jack offsuit using a 18% range. Just going to go ahead and try to get my 10 to showdown here. And it's good. Jack 8, I want to see what he stabbed with. Upper left-hand table, we get called by recreational players in position and from the big blind, so I'll be checking range on that 8-5 deuce two-tone board. Upper right-hand table, I'll raise the button first in with Jack-9 offsuit using a 44% range. And I will be check folding against the in-position half-pot stab and then the call from the small blind. This guy, he stabbed with the ace-jack, so he stabbed with the double gut shot and the overcard. Reasonable hand to stab the flop with. Upper right-hand table, we have the small blind call, and then the big blind squeezes, a pretty large size, 6x, although it should be larger with that one caller out there, but that's still a large size. I can go ahead and fold Jack-9 offsuit, which is one of my weaker hands in my pre-flop raise first in range to begin with. And the recreational player flatted kings in position, which is the kind of thing recreational players do, and it worked out for him. He doubled up. Min raise on the button on the upper or lower left-hand table, so we'll go ahead and fold the small blind with 10 jack. Get limps from a couple recreational players and a small blind completer. We're going to go ahead and isolate all these guys up using something like a 13% range. We have pocket tens. Get limp re-raised all in for 15 blinds total by the under the gun limper. We're just going to call off here easily. The other guys both fold, nothing to do but call off with the 10. So we're against aces. Cute. Congratulations. He wasted one of his sets hitting the set of aces there in that spot on the river. Lower left-hand table, raise the button first in with ace-queen offsuit using a 44% range. Upper left-hand table, recreational player limps under the gun. I will isolate from the button using king 4 suited. I use about a 28% range here, like something like my cutoff raise first in range. Lower left-hand table, I'll raise pocket threes first in from the cutoff using a 28% range. Upper left-hand table, get called by the big blind and the limper on a 9-9-6 rainbow flop. I will not be range betting multi-way, and I will check back king 4 suited. Good card for us on the turn, the 10 of diamonds, giving us a flush draw. Checks to me again, so I'm going to go ahead and start stabbing at that pot small, using about the 1/3 size. Because we are multi-way, I get called in both spots. River is the queen. I'm going to go ahead and continue betting at this. I'm going to use the small sizing because we're multi-way again and just try to pick up this pot very cheap with the bluff with my busted draw. You can see some cards getting scared, hands getting scared off because of that overcard peeling. Oh, he happened to have the top pair, which takes that away from us, but I'm quite comfortable that bluffing that river is the correct move. I'm not completely sure if I want to use a larger size or a smaller size because we're multi-way. I don't think overbetting would be the play there necessarily as a bluff. I guess I could have some overbet hands for value to some extent there, although I feel like most of the hands that want to overbet for value don't even check back the flop. Not really checking back the trips on the flop there. Not really checking back anything that ever made a full house. So I guess I don't really have overbets for value. I don't really need to be overbet bluffing there either. If I do want to overbet bluff, I'm not going to use the particular hand that I had right there either. I'm going to use stuff with better removal. So I guess the question comes down to, do I bet more like 1/3 or more like 2/3 for the bluff? I don't think it makes a particular difference on that hand against King Queen. It's going to calm me down either way. Lower left-hand table, the under the gun player limped. Small blind completes. We'll check in with Jack-9 offsuit from the big blind. Upper right-hand table will raise the cutoff first in with Jack-10 suited using a 28% range. We'll check our range out of the big blind in the lower right-hand table. Checks to us again in a turn. The lower right-hand table, go ahead and start stabbing for the minimum. In position player folds, the small blind comes along. River is the 6 of diamonds, which pairs the board, so his third pair now is drawn ahead of us, as does the flush draw. I don't see too much reason to value bet this hand or bluff this hand. I'm just going to show it down. And we chop with the different 9. Upper right-hand table will raise blind on blind with King-8 suited, or King-8 offsuit using a 45% range, and we'll check range on the Ace-5-3 rainbow board. Get a 3x open from the button, and a player with only about 45 bucks, he goes and he min raises from 6 to 10. He's played 43-4 over 23 hands. Normally for that type of size, I can just go ahead and get ace queen. However, when a player that's been that passive min raises, I think I could just go ahead and fold it. I'm going to go ahead and continue following through with my king high bluff on the upper right-hand table. Lower left-hand table, raise the button first in with Jack-9 offsuit, and he had King-10, but the button had Ace-Queen, so I got away with it for all the wrong. I made the correct move for all the wrong reasons. I thought that this guy had a real hand, and that I wasn't so worried about this player over here, the original raising player, having Ace-Queen beat. And he had Ace-King. Lower left-hand table, I'll range bet small on the Queen 10 or Jack 10-7 two-tone flop. My top pair. Turn is the deuce of clubs, closing the flush. On the flush closing turn, I'm not going to be using overbet or check size. I'm going to use a smaller half pot sizing or check, which means I can bet a much more mergy value range to either get value or deny equity from single club type hands. I'm going to go ahead and bet my Jack 9 no club. I need to check back the river in most cases. Upper right-hand table, the big blind calls us. We get a 7-4 deuce two-tone board. I'm going to go ahead and range bet small. Lower left-hand table, I can now check back. We were against a better jack all along. Turn is the 5 of hearts. I do have the king of hearts in my hand, which gives me some merit towards bluffing this. Although I don't really want to be using the king of hearts as the bluffing hand here. I want to be using ace of hearts only, I think, as my bluffing hands as far as naked flush draws go. Just because I don't want to bloat the pot too much with that king of hearts. I will have some other one heart hands that are also betting the half pot size here. I'm going to go ahead and check this one back. Lower right-hand table, I'll raise the cutoff first in with 5-4 suited using a 28% range. He overbets into us. I can just go ahead and fold my king high. Lower right-hand table, get an 876 monotone flop. I'm going to go ahead and range bet small. I do have the low end of the straight. Upper left-hand table, I'll raise first in from the cutoff with pocket eights using a 28% range. Lower left-hand table, blind on blind, I'll raise the aces first in using a 45% range. Upper left-hand table, I'll range bet small on king, queen, 5, two-tone. Lower left-hand table, 985, I will check range. Upper left-hand table, he quickly called. The turn is the 10. I've got no reason to be betting my eights here. I will check those back. He bets half pot into me, and I can just go ahead and fold my pocket eights for that sizing. Lower left-hand table, he stabs about 2/3 on that 985. I'm going to go ahead and check call my pocket aces and check the turn to him. That's 20 into 26. I will check call again. River I check. River is the 5. I check to him again. He checks back this time. Upper left-hand table, I raise ace-king first in from middle position using a 21% range. It's 7 deuce of clubs, so he didn't follow through with this busted draw on the river, though. Perhaps he really should have. Bluff our 6 high on the lower right-hand table. Get led into with the ace-king on the 8-6-4 two-tone flop. We don't have any of the relevant suits in our hand. There's also a player behind us. We're just going to go ahead and fold that. Lower left-hand table, raise the cutoff first in with 10-8 suited using a 28% range. Upper right-hand table, raise the cutoff first in with ace-queen offsuit using a 28% range. Recreational player calls in position. We'll check range to him on the king 10-10 two-tone flop. He checks back. We'll start stabbing the turn small. On that 7, putting the second flush draw out there. River is the 6 of spades, giving us the nut flush blocker. I'm going to go ahead and continue bluffing here. Against fish, I don't think I necessarily need to have an overbet bluff size. I'm just going to use a more standard size here. That would be a pretty decent candidate with the nut flush blocker. He goes ahead and just immediately snaps with Jack 7. Upper right-hand table, we have a 3-3-3 jack board. I'll go ahead and start stabbing small at the turn. There's no one showing any interest on the flop, and it checks to me again on the turn. Upper right-hand table, blind on blind, we'll raise the aces using a 45% range. Get a 2.2x raise first in from the under the gun player. I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet him with the ace-jack. It's kind of on the cusp. Could go either way, but I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet him. Use about a 9% range here. Upper left-hand table, we'll raise nines first in from the middle position using a 21% range. Lower right-hand table, raise Jack-9 suited first in from the button using a 44% range. Recreational player calls from the small blind. We get a King-Jack-8 monotone board. Assuming he checks, I'll be range betting this small. Upper left-hand table, King-3 suited just outside a standard cutoff, raise first in range. You'll even had the middle position player not opened. Does check on the lower right-hand table, so I'll go ahead and range bet him small. Upper right-hand table, cutoff opens 3x. I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet from the small blind with 10-9 suited, using about a 10% range here. Lower right-hand table, the under-the-gun player raises 3x. I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet him from the cutoff using, or I'm sorry, that's a middle position versus button because of that player being gone. So obviously going to be 3-betting the pocket 10s, using about a 9% range there as well. Get an Ace-Queen-9 rainbow flop. He checks to me, and I'll go ahead and put in a small range bet. Lower right-hand table, recreational player limps the cutoff. Button folds. Another recreational player completes the small blind. I'm going to isolate from the big blind with pocket 10s, using about a 13% range. Limper folds out, as does the small blind completer, and we pick up the small pot pre-flop. A tight passive player raises the cutoff 3x first in. I'm going to go ahead and defend the big blind against that player with the ace-queen offsuit for a call and not a 3-bet. Brilliant flop for us. I will check range to the raiser on that king-jack-10 two-tone board. That's 2/3. I'm going to go ahead and check raise him. I'm going to use a pot size check raise. Well, I guess I don't need to use a pot size check raise here. We get 3-bet, so we're going to sit here and tank for a moment and then jam all in over the top with nuts. We could be chopping, but we're very likely up against some kind of set or 2-pair hand instead. Some sort of large draw. Chopping against ace-queen. Blind on blind, upper left-hand table, we can go ahead and defend for a call with queen 8. Upper right-hand table, cutoff raises first in. We can 3-bet from the button with queen 10 suited. Using about a 13% 3-bet range in that spot. The upper left-hand table, against that small bet, we can probably just go ahead and fold. Could maybe float that, but I think folding's okay. Lower right-hand table, raise king 10 first in from middle position using a 21% range. Upper right-hand table, raise an ace 8 suited first in from the cutoff using a 28% range. And I'm going to go ahead and shut down these tables and take a break when the blinds come around to my big blind again. Upper left-hand table, I'll raise the deuces first in on the button. A 44% range. Lower right-hand table got calls all over the place. 5-handed flop. We'll be checking range with all those players out there and players in position to us on that king-jack-9 monotone board. I'm content keeping this pot smaller at this point with top pair, a gut shot, and sort of a middling one-card flush draw. Upper left-hand table, we get 3-bets small, a little bit less than 3x by the big blind. We can go ahead and defend with all our pocket pairs, including deuces against that size. Against that large continuation, but I'll just go ahead and fold the deuces. Against that large stab, I'm actually going to go ahead and fold my top pair here just because he should not be betting that large with that many players out there, especially in that monotone board as well. I don't need to be defending hands that are kind of second best and draw to second best type hands. I want to have big made hands and big draws, and that 10 high flush draw just doesn't do it for me. I think that's really supposed to be a check fold against that size with all those players out there. Now, we share the defense responsibility to keep his bet from being automatically profitable when there's so many players out there on that flop. And when he uses that size, just the required defense from each individual player is so low. I don't need to call with much of anything marginal. He uses a smaller bet size right there. He can string me along. but he chose not to do so. Upper left-hand table, fold the ace-4 offsuit under the gun, and that is the last hand. I'll be taking a break for a little while. Thank you for watching my video. Until next time, this is Charlie Murphy, signing off.